Hi, welcome everyone. I'm just going to do a short little webinar on what intensive training practice is. So you may have heard this term be used quite a lot when we're talking about initial teacher training from 24-25, and you may have been contacted. You may have had some of your members of staff talk about it. So I just thought it'd be useful to go through what actually is it, if you are having those instances where people are talking about it and you don't fully know. But it's going to become a massive part of ITT training, as you'll see in these slides. So, just generally, what is it? So this is a statement taken from the guidance document on this, but um, intensive training practice it's heavily research based, and the idea is that there's a trainee would get input. They would have scaffolded practice on whatever the input is, and then they would be given feedback on how well that went, and then they could then put it into practice within the classroom setting with their placement with the children in the placement schools that you offer as part of this. And the key really is that it's the providers are really carefully selecting which particular aspects of the core concept framework or their own training curriculum, what is really foundational, which aspects of them are transferable and are absolutely key to being the most effective teacher that they can be. And then they will then obviously then really deeply go into what that looks like across a long period of time, called an intensive training practice, rather than just spending a day or an hour on it, as what might previously happen with the time constraints that ITT curriculums often have. So the format that these will take then, so it's a minimum of 4 weeks for postgraduate ITT or 6 weeks for undergraduate ITT. So obviously that's 20 days or 30 days. But it's important to say that I'm not just saying that, and I understand people understand how many days it is, but they can be days at a time. They don't have to be in blocks. Originally, it was going to be that they were 4 weeks, so the wording still stands. That's why they say a minimum of 4 weeks, but it's actually 20 days. A lot of providers are still doing it weekly. So a lot are doing 4 ITAPs, less than 5 days each. Others are doing it different ways. They might be doing it in different sorts of things. So don't always think that every provider is going to do it the same way. And these are in additional to the 120 days spent on general school placements. So it's not the days that, so part of this we'll go through in a minute, but part of it will be spent in school. It needs to be, because we need to see the experts in the classroom and then go and practice ourselves in the classroom as a trainee. But those days in school aren't part of the 120. So they will do 120 days across the year, or be offered 120 days of school placements across the year. And then these 20 or 30 days, depending on whether they're postgrad or undergrad, will be in addition to that. Any time spent in school will be in addition to that. So they're getting more time in school effectively. As I mentioned, that doesn't need to be delivered in a single block. Previously, it was talked about that they would be weeks, but now these 20 or 30 days can be in any format that the provider decides is the best way. And they may speak to you as a school placement over that, about what's the best way to deliver this to have the most impact on those foundational aspects of pedagogy. So purpose, so it's going a little bit more then. So it is to, why are we spending so long on these like individual components, whereas we probably wouldn't have previously. We would have done it as part of a bigger block of teaching and learning or whatever it might be. And it's that idea to strengthen the link between the evidence and the classroom practice. So as always with the new frameworks, all the way up to your MPQs, etc., it is that idea of what's the evidence say behind it. And as I mentioned before, some elements of this have to take place in a school environment. It's why we're all in the game we're in, and why these trainees are training to be a teacher. So we will, as always, rely on the great schools that we work with, and obviously you're part of that, and we really appreciate whatever provider we are, the placements you offer us, and likewise it will be with the ITAPs that you offer. It needs to be led and supported by an appropriate range of experts. And obviously within the school setting, that's very often will be your experienced teachers, and the experienced ITT mentors will be really key in terms of delivering these, because I say, like, the key features, the first one is expert input. So that idea that the trainees will get some input, some educational research focused input on a piece of, as I say, like a real foundational aspect of teaching practice. The trainees will then have opportunities to plan and practice that in a low stakes environment. So some are doing sort of like online sort of, I suppose if you were training to be an airline pilot, you'd then go onto a flight simulator. So some are doing sort of like online sort of like low stakes type practices, or it might be practicing in front of peers, so a bit of role playing, a bit of deliberate practice in front of peers and colleagues. Yeah, number of different ways that will happen. And then they will then have opportunities to practice that in a live classroom context. So again, where the school placements are really key. So they've had some input, they've had to go at practicing it, role playing it, deliberate practice, either in a virtual online environment or a role playing environment. They'll then go and practice it with in a live classroom setting with students, and then they'll get that expert feedback. So again, those experts are really key within the school. So the teachers and the mentors will then give that feedback of the training practice, and then the trainees will then have opportunities to apply that later on in their course and moving into their ECT years to see whether by doing it as an intensive training practice it had a larger impact than if it had been done in any other format, is the idea behind it. So if you're interested in offering this, as say, it's separate to your general placements, school placements, there's something different. If you think you've got particular expertise, please email us at Flying High Futures as always, and we'll put you in touch with providers, and we'll be that sort of like go between. We know what providers are looking for. It might be about behaviour strategies, or it might be about scaffolding, or whichever aspect of the core concept framework. If that's an expertise area of yours, then we can try and pair you up with partners and get you involved in that. So any questions, give us a shout, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks.